Does the Fred VanVleet injury open up an opportunity to trade Anfernee Simons? Plus, I get an inside look at NBA officiating. It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Beantown, be ever ready. It's the C's. Who else could it be? What they gon' say now? Screaming like JT, Karalis. Recap the madness every game, every practice. Primetime Depp and D White on the sideline. Raining Jays, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked On Celtics pod, home of the winners.
Welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Your team is the Boston Celtics, and I talk about them Monday through Friday for free right here on this podcast that is available everywhere podcasts exist. It's on YouTube. Get into the comment section. Share your thoughts with your fellow everydayers, people who are with me every Monday through Friday. Plus, when the regular season starts, bonus podcasts when they play every day. So check that out. I'm John Karalis, by the way. I'm a host of this show covering the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. Been doing a version of this job for about 20 years now. I've also written a couple of books about the Boston Celtics. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make your first $5 bet if you're a new customer. And if you win, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So check that out at FanDuel.com. A couple different topics today. Later on, we'll talk about Jaylen Brown. He's on his Twitch. He's a streamer now. He's all over the place. Interesting dynamic here for Jaylen. I'll talk about that in the third segment. In the second segment, I'll talk about the reason why I'm on the road before the season starts. I got an inside look at NBA officiating at their annual camp right there. This is training camp opening up for all of these teams. There's a referee camp that opens up ahead of the season. 5-day intense camp that I got to be a part of for a day. That's in the second segment. But let's just start with the big news in the NBA, which is Fred VanVleet's injury. This is an incredible offseason. Honestly, I've never seen anything like this. We always talk about like, oh God, I don't want this guy to play an international competition. He's going to get hurt, this and that. Guys have been getting hurt in their offseason workouts, their pre-camp workouts. They're just on their own. Fred VanVleet tore his ACL just in a regular old workout. So we've seen, 5, 6 injury. Guys have had surgery. This has been an incredible preseason for guys getting hurt, getting ready for the season. I don't know what to make of it. It's probably just more of a quirk than anything, but it's still kind of wild to see all of these injuries happening in controlled situations. So you never know when a guy's going to get hurt. VanVleet tore his ACL, which puts the Houston Rockets in a jam. And listen, go listen to Locked On Rockets to see exactly, the Amen Thompson, Reed Shepherd, they're going to rely on those guys. But a thing that's come up now, it's like, well, hey, we've got an extra guard here in Boston. Is there anything the Celtics can do to send Anfernee Simons or somebody over to Houston and get it? Look, you don't root for injuries, but they happen. This is the situation that Houston is in. What do the Celtics do? Can they take advantage of the situation? I know it sounds gross, but this is like you wish the guy well. Again, you never root for any injuries, but people come up and say, hey, all right, well, here's the situation. And the short answer is no, the Celtics are not going to get involved right away in this because the Rockets are hard capped at the first apron. Not only that, and this is the real difficult part about team building in this new era. We talk about second apron and all of that, but there are first aprons, right? There's, getting Kevin Durant and some of the moves they've made in the offseason, hard cap them at the first apron and have only given them $1.25 million of room before you reach that hard cap. And when we say hard cap, they cannot under any circumstances surpass that. Not an injury, not nothing. Like this is the real danger of making certain moves under this new collective bargaining agreement. The Rockets thought like, hey, we're set. We've got everything. We can hard cap ourselves at the first apron. It's okay because we've got our team, and you just hope for the best, right? And you know that an injury is something you'd have to figure out if you get to that point. Well, that injury came in the middle of September, not November, December, or anything like that. And it really has kind of like handcuffed the Rockets. They can't go and sign. They can't even sign like a Markelle Fultz. They can't even sign a Ben Simmons because that minimum contract takes them beyond that hard cap. You can't be a penny over that. So they aren't signing one of the available guards. The trades, so that limits who they can trade. And a lot of these guys that might be moved aren't eligible to be moved until December 15th. So that puts them in a bind. This is why everybody's talking about Amen Thompson and Reed Shepherd and those guys, because the Rockets don't have any other options. This is going to be who they go to. They're going to have to find their answer in-house. So the Celtics can't, I'm sure the Rockets would love to be like, hey, well, we can talk about Anfernee Simons, sure. But that won't happen until the middle of December. By then, we might know if any of the stopgap measures are actually good. And by then, other things might have happened. And you just don't know what the market's going to look like in the middle of December, or what the Rockets are going to look like. I'm not going to say that losing Fred VanVleet's going to make them fall apart, but it's a pretty major piece. And who knows? Maybe they're fine. Maybe they're just fine. They go, oh no, we can handle this. We're good. So any thought of the Celtics getting involved now and being like, hey, we got Anfernee Simons here for you, and maybe taking advantage of giving them a player of need. They're in a win now situation. And I understand the mentality. Absolutely. I mean, it makes perfect sense. They want to win now. The Celtics aren't necessarily in a win now situation. So why wouldn't you think to make that move? The Rockets just can't. They can't. They're stuck for the next few months. They have no choice but to see if any of these internal candidates are going to be answers for what they're looking for. But I think it highlights the bigger picture of how willing our team's going to be to do things that hard cap them at certain levels. And, there's, you offer the full mid-level exception to somebody, and that hard caps you at the first apron. Now, some teams might say we're not even close, so it doesn't matter. Some teams might, like the Rockets, say we're close, but we don't care. This is our best chance. But I think we're starting to see these little things that will give teams pause to do some of these big things and spend their money. And I think that's exactly what the league wanted. The league wanted teams to be cautious about spending their money. There was never going to be an actual hard cap of whatever number, even at the second apron. But they could, and they did, implement these hard cap triggers to, if you give the players certain things in other spots of the CBA, these triggers made it in, and it's not a full-on hard cap, but it is making teams, like, it is hard capping teams for at least a year here, a year there. So I think that we're really starting to get into the meat of like, oh man, maybe we don't want to do these certain things. And it is going to hold some of the spending down. And that's kind of what the league has always been looking for, holding the spending down so teams aren't going way, or specific teams aren't going way over. And yeah, great, they're taxpayers, but they want everybody to control their spending, be in a certain area. I think I've said this before on the podcast, but I think what's going to end up happening ultimately when we get to the end of the figuring out process and we just get into the mundane, nitty gritty. We've been in the CBA for a long time, and I think everybody settles somewhere in this middle ground where you have a couple of teams, 2-3 teams that are bad and rebuilding and are going to be at the low end, and a couple of teams are like, okay, this is our time to go for it. And you had a couple of second apron teams, but I think most teams are going to hover right around the spot where Houston is, and hard cap or not, they're not going to want to go over that for a variety of reasons. So I think this is just the beginning, but we'll save that for bigger talk, locked on NBA talk, or whatever. But the Celtics cannot get into the Fred VanVleet solution business, at least not until the middle of December. And who knows what it's going to be at that point. All right, let's come back with the NBA officials camp. I got an inside look at NBA officiating, what they're ramping up to do. Really enlightening stuff. That's coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. There's a good chance that you have a bunch of investments, especially if you're a grown-up like me, and you probably can't name all of the places where your money is off the top of your head. You need one place, one centralized location, and Monarch Money is going to help you do that. You don't want to leave money on the table because you don't have your full financial picture. Monarch Money has an easy-to-use interface. You can use it on your laptop or your phone. It's built for people like you with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch can do the heavy lifting for you. You just take one moment to link all your accounts. You can get those clear data visuals, smart categorization of your spending, which I know I need, because sometimes you just end up like, oh, I gotta get this, I gotta get that. This bill needs to get paid. You all of a sudden you realize like, wow, I'm spending too much money on X. So you don't want to do that. Get your finances in order. Include your partner's finances so you get a much clearer picture. You can maximize your investments, increase your savings rate, and just very easily keep track of everything week to week and long term. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. I mentioned Locked On NBA. There's 2 Locked On NBA podcasts I'm hosting on Wednesdays this season with Jake Madison on Locked On NBA Game Night. When the season starts, we will be covering all of the games. But until then, we're just covering the big stories in the league. The Fred VanVleet injury is going to be big. That's part of the Locked On NBA and Locked On NBA Game Night. 2 podcasts on the same feed, wherever you found this one. I was, and I mentioned I was, I'm podcasting from hotels right now because I've gone to New York for the NBA's officiating camp. Like they take 5 days in New York, all the officials, some prospective officials. It's a lot of people. They spend 5 days pouring through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of plays and points of emphasis and things that, it's kind of an incredible detailed view. And if you're a regular listener, you know that I don't harp on officiating. I tend to stay away from that, knowing that obviously officials impact plays, but when you see the depth of everything that they are looking at, from their positioning on the floor, how they interact with one another, what their responsibilities are. They have very specific ways to watch the game. And, you see, like, they showed how you get into like a blown call and, specific plays that, high profile plays where they say, well, the referee wasn't looking, at where he was supposed to look. And if he was looking where he's supposed to look, he wouldn't have missed this call. And these types of things are like very, very enlightening. So we got a little look at their points of emphasis. So we're going to start seeing, there's a couple of things that I think are interesting. One is you're going to see a lot of calls being made after the ball is released. So there's a very well-known rule, like it's called the high five rule, where once you release the ball, guys have just been able to like slap the shooter's hand and be like, it's not really a foul because the ball is released. This doesn't impact the play. And guys have started to like take advantage of that, really push the envelope and initiate contact. Like the ball is gone and they'll initiate contact just to send messages to that shooter being like, hey, every time you shoot the ball, I'm going to be here to slap you on the wrist. So if you're sick of getting slapped on the wrist, don't shoot the ball. You know, those types of things. And they're going to start calling that now. Anything that's a little unnatural, any of those kind of things. So you're going to see a lot more fouls on jump shots, which is going to be interesting because the Celtics are going to be a very jump shot heavy team. And I wonder, like early on in the season, if this point of emphasis is going to be something the Celtics can benefit from. And it's just this little quirk. It's a little thing, and it's not going to last forever because once those calls start happening, guys will get used to how the game is being called, and those calls will start to go away. But for a jump shooting team still trying to figure things out, you know, I've talked about how tough the early part of the schedule is. If there's anything like that can give the Celtics a couple extra free throws, 2, 4, 6 extra free throws, depending on the game, maybe a couple of these games swing on a call that we weren't used to seeing. So, and there are other points of emphasis that at some point it's going to be, you know, put out publicly. Like these are the things that we're looking at. And they do a very good job of explaining everything. I asked them specifically about technical fouls because emphasis is on like the rules and the, you know, there's guidance for technical fouls and there's certain things that are, you know, automatic triggers. And, you know, you think about an automatic trigger for a technical foul and you get that Jayson Tatum wave off. And that's always been like an automatic tech. I think the message that I got here is not necessarily specifically for the wave off, the Jayson Tatum wave off, but the officials are going to get a little bit more leeway this year that some of these things, and I think the Tatum kind of wave off is going to be in that mix. They're going to have a little bit more leeway to let guys kind of blow off a little steam. And so Tatum is like, he's never been in danger of a suspension. He knows how much he can get away with. And, you know, he might be pushing 14, 15 techs anyway, no matter what. If he wants to make a point, he'll make his point. So he might save a couple of technical foul fines, which are, I forget what they are, a few $1,000s or whatever. Nothing of any consequence to Jayson Tatum. So a couple of those wave offs might get let go. But I'm sure he can earn a tech somewhere else along the way. So, but I think there's going to be, I think the league is trying to just, first of all, just make things a little bit more equitable. Just treat players maybe a little bit more kind of evenly. So we might see some guys get techs that don't normally, or some behavior that was kind of like tolerated might get a little, and then we might see some of the automatic triggers that used to be a tech kind of be like, you get a little bit. So a little bit of leeway, I should say. So I think that's going to be, an important part of, now, obviously Tatum is out for most of this season, if not all of this season, but I think it's going to be an important part of officiating him moving forward. And the last thing that it seems like that I think they're going to try to do is just speed up what's called like the administration of the game, which means free throws. I'm very curious to see, and this was not addressed specifically, but like the Giannis Antetokounmpo taking 10 seconds to mimic his shot, like, and they just wait. Like, I think they're going to, like, from what I understand, they might start like just, hey, here's the ball, shoot it. And you got 10 seconds to shoot it. So like Giannis has to figure that part out. But they're not going to like sit around and wait to see if, a team's going to challenge anything. You know, those moments where Al Horford is always like, inbound the ball. I'm here. I'm ready. I think those moments are actually going to move to what Al Horford wants to do. Like those are just going to become inbounded. They're not going to sit around and wait for challenges and stuff. So I thought the officiating stuff was super interesting. The camera stuff, they have like a ton of new cameras, high speed cameras that are going to be able to, I think eventually you're going to start seeing in the broadcasts, not quite like the Hawkeye tennis stuff, but you're going to start to see like on goaltends, you're going to see like visualizations during the broadcast of the ball like coming down. So it is going to look a little bit like the Hawkeye-ish stuff, and they're going to use some of that technology, that same technology. But a shot on the way down, like did the ball pass its apex? And you're going to actually see a visualization of that on broadcasts. And I think that's going to be like a cool little element to that. And the league is eventually going to be working towards a lot more of that automation, out of bounds calls, goaltending calls. They're going to be able to, I don't know how they're going to do it, but the way it was characterized to us was within like 3 to 5 years. It's still a ways off, but they're hopefully going to be able to, all of those offensive goaltending calls that they miss, the goaltending where the ball hits the backboard, where the refs miss those a ton. Like those are calls that are going to be left up to the automation at some point. So, which will free up the officials to actually make the calls on the floor and focus on that stuff. They don't have to follow the trajectory of the ball or whatever. That system will take care of that. So the way the game's officiated is going to change over time. So I thought it was really cool. And as the season progresses, I hope to apply some of like the little nuanced stuff that makes for a crappy podcast, but is good for like explaining why certain calls were made. I hope to apply that to some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about here over the course of the season, why a call was made or missed or whatever. So hopefully my little day at officiating camp will benefit the podcast and your knowledge during the season, this season and moving forward. So very cool of the NBA to do that. I was very excited about that. It's going to wrap up the show with Jaylen Brown on his Twitch stream. He's a Twitch streamer now, talking about how we're in a new era. That is coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers, you sign up at FanDuel right now. You make your first $5 bet. You can get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app if that first $5 bet wins. You got to be a new customer, and you got to win that first $5 bet. So make it a good one. Make it an easy one. Don't worry about the odds or anything like that. Pick a winner, win that first $5 bet, and get your $300 in bonus bets to use any way you want across the app. So if you want to build a same game parlay, if you want to do player props, you want to jump in and live action. If you're watching a football game and you say, I've got these $300 in bonus bets, let me jump in and pick a second half winner or who I think, is going to do what in the third quarter. That's all there on the FanDuel app. So go have some fun and, enjoy it. When you do sign up at FanDuel.com, you'll have right away, it's like the first thing that pops up, set your budgeting, set your limits, use the tool that's there, set it at whatever you can afford to lose, your disposable income, just in case you hit a rough patch, you're not going overboard. No one wants that. Just whatever you can afford. So do that at FanDuel.com. Go place that first $5 bet. Hopefully it wins and you get 300 in bonus bets. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Remember, we got Mailbag Mondays. Still doing mailbags at johnkaralis.com/mailbag, johnkaralis.com/mailbag. Submit your questions. I'll answer them on Mondays. Once the season starts, we get to maybe different days. But I like the alliteration of Mailbag Monday. So for now, as long as I can, I'm going to do Mailbag Mondays. Jaylen Brown, it's so interesting. Jaylen is like out there now. First of all, cool to see him out there helping Bill Nye getting his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Jaylen's having himself a nice little offseason where, he's been around Boston schools. He's giving back to the community in a big way, which is really cool to see. He's been, I think, more out there. I don't know if this is, part of him evolving as a player, as a person. I haven't seen him streaming as much as he is now. He's kind of doing I don't know. He's always been a more, I think, private type of person. It seems, and now he's kind of putting himself out there, which is super interesting to see. So he was on Twitch, and he was, first of all, he was calling people to see who would pick up. He has a new number, so no one picked up. They didn't recognize his number. Eventually, he got through to Peyton Pritchard, which was cool. But he said, quote, "Half the team is gone. I wish them the best. I appreciate them. They were great teammates. But it's a new era. Everything has kind of changed and shifted. Sticking with his energy has shifted thing." He continues to say that. And yeah, well, okay, sure. And I thought it was interesting because I was just asked a question in yesterday's mailbag about, is this a new chapter, a new story? And, Jaylen's looking at this as a new era because a few teammates are gone, which I disagree with. As I said yesterday, I still think that Jaylen and Jayson are the main characters. And this is just an interesting kind of like twist to like the nearly end of their story. But I still think it's the same story, just with some new characters being involved at the end, right? Sometimes, like, think of Shawshank Redemption when they brought in that guy. I forget what the kid's name was, that couldn't read, and Andy teaches him to read, but they ended up shooting him as part of the plot. You needed to get Andy frustrated so he can finally escape. So you bring in a new character, and I think some of these are like new characters. So, but it was interesting to hear him talk about this new era, and I think for Jaylen, like this is part of his new era. It's very interesting for him to say it that way, because to me, it's, Jaylen is taking this turn, right? This is his last season in his 20s in the NBA. So next season, the 26-27, he's going to be 30. And that's a big turning point in a player's career. Even though at 30, you can still do a lot of the same stuff that you were doing at 27. It's not like you can noticeably lose a step at 30. But that 3 as that first number in your age in the NBA level, that's we're hitting retirement age, right? You retire at 30 something. Now, Jaylen is an elite player. He's probably not going to retire until he's, 36, 37, 38, potentially, depending on how his career progresses and what he wants to do. But 30 something is your retirement age, unless you're LeBron, right? Very select few get that 4 in there at the beginning of their age. So it is a beginning of a new era for Jaylen. And not only is he leading this team, but this is a whole new potential chapter in like, you have 3 very specific kind of chapters in a player's life. You get the young, proving yourself, kind of, still trying to earn that big contract, still trying to prove that you're an NBA, player or an NBA star or whatever. Then you have like your prime, which Jaylen is firmly in, and it's like, let's rock, right? You're doing things that you never thought that you could do before. You're innovating your game. Jaylen's developed that step through move, which is really good. You're really kind of like exploring the studio space, so to speak. And then you get your 30s, that next stage of like, starting at, I don't know, like 32-ish. It's like, all right, we start talking about you in a different way. That early 30s, 27 is your prime. You say 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, you start to go like, okay, you were at the tail end of his prime. 32, you're like, okay, people start to talk to you like you're the vet. You're the vet, right? You're the OG. And now we're starting to talk about like when Jaylen's 32 and Jayson's 31, and like, okay, we're going to start like really looking at the hard decisions that are going to start being made in team building. Every team has to face them when their stars get to be in that area. You have hard decisions to make that are made harder by this new CBA. This chapter for Jaylen, it's not just a new era for the Celtics, it's a new era for him. And I think all of this is part of it. You know, the Twitch streaming, the stuff that he's doing. Like, yes, he's promoting a brand. He's also promoting himself, and he's also, I think you have to be a little bit more at ease with yourself to put yourself out there like that and feel like you can, you know, be like misinterpreted or misjudged and like not care. It's, I think Jaylen is turning that corner, which I think is great. It's like a helpful kind of like, if the fewer F's that you give in that regard, it shows up on the court, you know? And so it's interesting to see him do this. It's interesting to see him be this kind of player, be this kind of person. And to hear him, that, like, I'm going to be following him on Twitch. I'm going to see the progression here, how he approaches certain things. And then look, he said he's going to be watching film on there and he's going to be like kind of breaking things down. So I'm very, very curious to see how he sees the game as well. So that's going to be, you know, for him to be doing that openly. Talk about new era. This is a new kind of version of Jaylen Brown. And I'm all for it. Like, I think this, I'm really looking forward to Jaylen Brown this season. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does in this role, how he excels in this role, and what it means for him. I've talked about that a lot. But I loved the way he was able to handle those opportunities this past season. I thought this past season he was probably at his best as the lone star on the team. Like when Jayson was out and Jaylen was there as the number one guy, I thought Jaylen really, really showed up and played the right way. And I haven't talked about Paul Pierce's advice to Jaylen Brown, where he talked about needing to be like more things to more of his teammates rather than just make up for Jayson's absence. I thought we saw Jaylen doing that a lot last year. I mean, it didn't work every game. And I think, you know, obviously the elimination game in New York, Jaylen was, you know, his knee was, you know, the meniscus was really hurting him. So that almost doesn't count. But anyway, I loved how Jaylen handled that role last year. If he can take that next step forward, same type of attitude, and just extrapolate that out for 82 games or however many games he plays, it really, we talk about new era. It could be a new era for him. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing that. All right. Remember this week, I should have said this before, but Bill Chisholm is speaking to the media this week. So that will be part of the show. I think it's happening on Thursday. So that would be the Friday show. So we're rearranging some things this week to accommodate the new Celtics owner. So make sure you're subscribed to this podcast. Make sure that however you want to do it, you like audio, you like to listen, it's available everywhere. You want to watch the show on YouTube, you can do that. Please do that and get into the comment section, share your thoughts there. And then I would love it if you shared the podcast and told everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.